Somewhere around dinner time, while you're 2 decks up deciding between the salmon and the steak, a door on your hallway opens. Not quite yours. Theirs, too. Your cabin steward has a key to the room you're paying for, and right now they're standing inside it, straightening the bed you left in a heap, and they already know more about your week than you'd probably guess. Talk to enough former cabin stewards, the people who live below the waterline and turn around 20 rooms a day, and the same picture comes together. Most of what happens to your cabin happens while you're nowhere near it, and almost none of it works the way the brochure quietly implies. These are the things a cabin steward could tell you about your own room, if the job let them say it out loud. Some are small, some will change the way you tip. And number 6 is the one that genuinely unsettles people the first time they hear it. But it starts with something that changed on the biggest cruise lines over the last couple of years, softly, while almost nobody was paying attention. Number 1. The service you think you booked got cut in half. For decades, twice-a-day housekeeping was the thing that separated a cruise from a hotel. Your steward came through in the morning to clean and make the beds, then again at night for turndown, the folded towel animal, the chocolate on the pillow. Then it went away. Carnival dropped to once-a-day cleaning for standard cabins back in 2022. Norwegian followed that December. And in 2023, Royal Caribbean, the largest cruise line in the world, rolled it out across the whole fleet. Between them, those 3 brands account for more than a third of every cruise taken on the planet. Officially, the reason was sustainability, a move to align with global hospitality trends. Unofficially, 1 fewer service per cabin means 1 steward can cover more rooms, so the line needs fewer stewards. As far back as 1916, Carnival was already nudging guests to pick morning or evening cleaning. Dropping the second visit entirely was just the next step. Suites still get both visits. Everyone else got a polite note explaining that less is somehow more. So if your last cruise felt a little less pampered than you remembered, you weren't imagining it. Number 2. There's 1 steward and there are about 20 of you. When the job listings go out, a cabin steward is responsible for a station of roughly 15 to 24 staterooms. Picture that for a second. 20 rooms, every single day. 20 bathrooms to sanitize, 20 sets of beds to strip and remake, 20 trash bins, 20 piles of wet towels, 20 families with 20 different ideas of tidy. And they do it on a schedule that would flatten most people. Former crew describe days that run 10 to 12 hours, 7 days a week, with no real day off, on contracts that stretch 6 to 9 months at a time. There's no Saturday, there's no calling in tired. Below the passenger decks, a long crew corridor runs the entire length of the ship, and the crew even have a name for it. They call it the I-95 after the American highway, because it's the fast lane that keeps the ship's hidden workforce moving without ever stepping into a guest area. That corridor is where their whole life happens between shifts. So that towel animal waiting on your bed, the little swan with the sunglasses perched on its head, took real effort from a real person. 1 steward, deep into a 12-hour shift, decided your room was worth 30 extra seconds. That's worth remembering the next time you pass them in the hallway. The steward is a human being having a very long day, and almost nobody on board stops to think about who they are. Number 3. They're in your room when you're not, and that's by design. Here's something a lot of first-time cruisers don't fully register until they think about it. Your cabin steward has their own key, and they don't need you there to do their job. In fact, they'd rather you weren't. The whole rhythm of the work depends on servicing your room while you're at breakfast, at the pool, or ashore in port. You leave, the door clicks shut, and sometime in the next few hours, it opens again without you. That's completely normal, and it's no different from any hotel on land. But on a ship, the person with the key is the same person all week. They see the room on day 1 when it's spotless, and they see it on day 4 when the seasickness bands and the sunburn cream and the emptied minibar tell the story of how the trip is really going. This is exactly why every cruise line tells you the same 2 things. Use the safe for anything that matters: your passport, your cash, your watch. And use the do not disturb sign or the little magnet the second you want the room left alone. Not because your steward is going through your things. The overwhelming majority never would. But because the honest truth of a cruise cabin is that it's your private space and a shared workspace at the very same time, and the safe exists so you never have to think about which one it is. And there's one thing your steward won't touch, by the way. They won't tidy your personal clutter, the vanity buried in makeup and chargers and yesterday's receipts. That stays exactly where you dropped it. Number 4. Your steward learns your name fast, and some guests are known before they even board. Walk down your hallway on day 2 and your steward will greet you by name, and it can feel a little uncanny the first time. It's not a trick. A steward who works the same corridor for a week learns every face and every cabin number in their section within a day or two, because that's the job, and because a guest they can name is a guest they can look after. But it goes further than that, and this is where former crew get interesting. Certain passengers are flagged before the ship ever leaves port. High rollers who spend big in the casino, top-tier loyalty members, guests in the owner's suite. Their names get passed around ahead of time so the crew can greet them personally and keep an eye out. On the ships with a ship within a ship, the Haven on Norwegian, the Yacht Club on MSC, the Retreat on Celebrity, top suite guests get a personal crew introduction on embarkation day, greeted by name at the door before they even reach the cabin. On some ships, the facial recognition that speeds up your boarding is doing double duty, helping the crew match faces to the passengers who matter most. So when you picture your steward as someone who simply cleans and disappears, you're missing half of it. They're the front line of a floating hotel that's constantly reading its guests. Where you sit for dinner, how you tip, whether you smiled on day 1, all of it becomes part of a picture the crew builds together. And the crew talk. Word travels fast on a ship, faster than almost anywhere on land, because everyone lives and eats and sleeps in the same few corridors. The passenger who's warm to one crew member has, without knowing it, just introduced themselves to a dozen more. Number 5. The routine behind the door is bigger than you think. When your steward services the cabin, it's not a quick tidy. On a proper turnaround, the job runs down a checklist most guests never see. Beds get stripped and recovered on a set schedule, not just pulled straight. The bathroom gets a real sanitize, to a public health standard the whole ship is inspected against. Trash and room service trays vanish. Towels are counted and swapped. Amenities are restocked. There's even personal laundry to handle. Hand your steward a bag of shirts and they carry it down to the ship's laundry and back, then leave the bill on your account, and that laundry runs almost around the clock, because a ship this size never stops generating sheets and towels. And on most ships, the steward isn't working alone. There's an assistant steward sharing the station, and above them a chief housekeeper who inspects the work and writes up anything missed. Your steward answers to that inspection every single day and has to stay current on the United States public health rules their section is graded against, because a cruise ship that fails an inspection makes the news. Those inspections aren't a formality. The ship gets scored against that standard, and a bad score becomes public, which is why the sanitizing is timed and checked, not eyeballed. On the last night, it's your steward who slides the disembarkation documents under your door with the luggage tags and the color-coded departure time, the quiet signal that the trip is ending. And the turndown, on the cabins that still get one, is its own small performance. The lights dimmed, the bed opened, the next day's schedule laid out, sometimes a chocolate, sometimes that swan. None of it is random. All of it is a system, run by someone being graded on it, in the narrow gap of time while you're off somewhere enjoying the thing they're making possible. If any of this is making you see your last cruise a little differently, take a second and subscribe, because this channel goes below the passenger decks every single week. Now, the one that stops people cold. Number 6. Disappear for a couple of days, and someone will come looking. This is the one that unsettles people, and honestly it shouldn't, because underneath it's one of the more reassuring things about how a ship actually runs. Crew are trained to notice you, and not for the reason you'd think. It's about safety. If a passenger hasn't been seen in the hallways, hasn't turned up on the security cameras, hasn't opened their door for a stretch of time, that gets noticed, and it gets acted on. Former crew describe being trained to stay hyper-observant of anyone who drops off the radar or looks unwell. Because on a ship in the middle of the ocean, a guest who vanishes is not a small thing. It could be nothing. It could be someone who slept in and never left the balcony. But it could also be a medical emergency with nobody around to call for help, and the crew are the only ones who can reach you. So they check. A knock, a call to the cabin, a friendly welfare visit. And if a guest is genuinely unresponsive, the story changes fast. Crew have described being trained to enter the cabin and inspect it when someone won't answer and can't be accounted for. Your locked door is not the final word when the crew have real reason to worry. There are stories of passengers who stayed sick in their cabin for days while a travel companion carried on with the vacation until the ship's doctor and the room steward arrived together at the door to check that they were still okay. It's worth sitting with how rare that is on land. No hotel on Earth is keeping a running count of whether you, specifically, are still all right today. On a ship, someone is, and that someone is usually the person who makes your bed. You think of your cabin as the one place on the ship that's entirely yours, sealed off, private. And mostly it is. But the crew are counting heads the whole time, and your room is one of the numbers they're counting. Number 7. Your service got smaller. Your tip did not. Here's the part most cruisers get wrong, and it's worth slowing down for. When the big lines cut cabin service from twice a day to once, the daily gratuity didn't shrink with it. On most mainstream ships, you're still paying an automatic gratuity of roughly $16 to $20 per passenger per day, added straight to your onboard account. Carnival runs $17 a day, Royal Caribbean $18.50, and Norwegian tops the mainstream lines at $20, charged to every guest, every night, regardless of age. For a family of 4 on a week-long cruise, that's more than $500 in tips alone, and plenty of guests don't realize it's even being charged until the final bill lands. That money is pooled and split across the crew who serve you, your cabin steward among them. So the steward is now covering more rooms for a slice of a tip that didn't grow. And their base pay isn't making up the difference. Former crew put the base salary somewhere around $1,000 to $2,000 a month before tips, which is why those gratuities aren't a bonus for them. They're most of the paycheck. Here's the practical part. If you strike the automatic gratuity off your bill, which some passengers do, that steward genuinely feels it. And on a ship where the crew talk, they tend to know who did it. If you want the person cleaning your room to actually receive your thanks, the surest way is cash, handed over directly, because a folded bill in the hand skips the pool entirely and lands where you meant it to go. A steward remembers the guest whose thanks actually reached them long after the cruise is over. Number 8. There's a whole menu of things you're allowed to ask for, and almost nobody does. Your cabin steward can do far more than refill the ice bucket, and the guests who figure this out early tend to have a better week than everyone else on the hallway. Need the mini fridge turned down cold enough to store insulin or another medication? Ask. They'll adjust it or bring ice packs, and they won't blink. Want the 2 beds pushed together or split apart? That's a day 1 request, and it's done by the time you're back from dinner. Extra towels, extra pillows, wine glasses for the balcony, fresh ice twice a day, a bathrobe that actually fits, firmer or softer pillows, extra hangers for formal night. All of it is on the table, and none of it costs you a thing but the asking. And if you're missing that lost second service, you've got options there too. On the lines that cut it, you at least get to choose whether your one visit lands in the morning or the evening, so pick the one that fits how you actually vacation. A few lines have even turned the cut into a perk. Celebrity, for one, still runs twice-a-day service, but lets you opt into once-a-day cleaning through a green program and hands you extra loyalty points for choosing it. Read that the way the crew do. The line worked out that some guests will happily give up a service if you frame it as saving the planet and reward them for it. And if twice a day genuinely matters to you, book a suite, because suites almost always kept both visits, or sail a line that never made the cut at all. Holland America, Princess, Disney, Virgin Voyages, and MSC were all still running twice-a-day service on standard cabins while the big 3 pulled back. The old level of service is still out there. You just pay more for it now. Number 9. The single most effective thing you can do costs 30 seconds and $0. Learn your steward's name and use it. That's it. That's the whole secret, and it's the one every former crew member circles back to. In a job where the rooms and the faces blur together and half the guests never make eye contact, the passenger who reads the little name card on the cart or simply asks and then says good morning by name for the rest of the week becomes a real person to that crew almost instantly. And remember, the crew talk. That one small courtesy travels. The steward mentions you to the waiter to the bartender, and suddenly your ice bucket is always full. Your requests happen before you finish asking, and the honest port advice that never made it into any brochure finds its way to you. None of it is bribery. It's just the oldest rule there is, running at sea. People take care of the people who saw them as people, Ask around, and former crew say the guests they remember years later are almost never the biggest tippers. They're the ones who asked how the steward was doing and actually waited for the answer. So, learn the name. Say thank you like you mean it. Treat the person turning down your bed as a human being having a very long day. Do that, and you stop being just another cabin number in the section. You become the good one, the guest the whole crew has agreed to look after. And on a ship, there's no better place to be. And the name is just the first move. There's a whole list of small habits that decide whether the crew look after you or write you off before the ship even leaves port, and that video is sitting right next to this one.